Tell me a plausible story where not doing this causes significant negative impact.
Mhm.
And if I can answer that question like that, we better fix it. And if I can't answer that question, or if the question is 3, 4 levels of theory down, we that's a lower priority. So Andy Ellis has a model that he's put out that I really love, which
Yeah.
is basically how surprising would this be and how bad would it be? That also enables me to generically say, kind of gut feel say, is this a $10 solution to a $5 problem?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Future of Security Operations podcast. This week, I am delighted to be joined by Brent Deterding. Brent has over 25 years of experience in security, both on the vendor side and now as a security leader. He spent a huge part of his career with cloud-native security analytics platform SecureWorks, and he's currently the CISO of Afni, a global provider of contact center solutions in the US, Philippines, and Mexico. I am delighted to welcome you on the podcast.
Hey, thanks.
I've been looking forward to this for such a long time. When I'm having conversations with our podcast guru Selena, we've been referring to you as the Happy CISO. So I'm really excited to have you on. Brent, let's get started with some of your background, I suppose. So you spent 19 years on the vendor side at SecureWorks, 15 years in operations, 4 years kind of in a global sales overlay role before you became a CISO. That's a pretty unconventional career path. What made you decide you wanted to become a CISO?
So prior to COVID, I was talking to CISOs and I was like, I don't think I can do that job. But I live in the big cornfield west of Chicago, and I did not want to drive my happy butt downtown 4 days a week or whatever. And though I was like, no, not doing it. Then after COVID, people were kind of sort of okay with that. I was like, hey, okay. And so I learned the things that I felt I needed to learn to become a CISO, which is just taking my experience and expertise and wisdom and translating it through a different lens, right? That executive lens. And then I interviewed for a really long time to kind of find the place in which I could succeed. And what I found is that a lot of people wanted a doer and they gave lip service to the strategic executive part. They're like, oh yeah, that too. I'm like, I don't think so. I think it took me a while and it took some iteration on resume, interview style, all that to figure out how to properly position myself for what I wanted to do. And then I found Afni and I liked it quite a bit. We resonated, like culture-wise, resonated quite a bit. And the rest is history, I guess. So it was a little bit of luck that honestly that I found Afni. But I said, I had been interviewing for probably a year. Yeah, probably a year before I ran across Afni and revising the whole time, kind of iterating, figuring out what the market wanted and what I could bring and figuring out the right match. But there was definitely a lot of stuff that I was like, no, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that because the CISO title exists in a very large range of people and roles and organizations. And I was pretty clear about what I wanted. And I was pretty clear that it had to match what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So that took a while because it's not at all clear from job descriptions, right?
Completely. And I know in some other podcasts that I've been listening to, you kind of refer a little bit to the fact that you make a little bit of your own look, and it's no coincidence, I suppose, that you've been getting on really well at Afni. But you said, it was a combination of things. But what was it? What was it that made Afni the right company that you were like, actually, this is a company that I can join?
Sure. So one, there's the intangible gut feel. So it's an old Bob Dylan song that says, the country I come from is called the Midwest. So the CIO reminds me of my best man at my wedding. The CEO reminds me of my wife's uncle. And the CFO reminds me of my father-in-law, right? So these are people that I have interacted with my entire life, right? I get them, they get me. It's just easy. Does that mean that I could not work for a non-Midwest company? No, of course I could, but it's really easy. And they wanted a executive CISO. They wanted someone to come in, be that executive, be a firm hand and lead, and make our clients comfortable, make our internal people comfortable, make everyone comfortable with security, because it was just handled, right? Did not need a sky is falling person. Needed someone to understand the business, understand our business, how we make money, where we make money, why that is, how that affects the day-to-day roadmap. And they found that in me, and I found that in them. So it was really matching what I bring, and what they needed were equal. The culture fitting really well made that. It's a very familial type environment. I've had, I mean, that said, like half my team is in the Philippines, half my team is here in the US. I've had zero attrition in 2 years, which I think speaks pretty well that we've aligned all these things pretty well, and pretty happy with it. Like it's fun, honestly. Like I like it here. I like my job. I love being a CISO. It's fun. It's exactly what I signed up for. Exactly what I got. I'm happy.
Yeah, this is exactly why I was looking forward to this conversation. That's not something like I think a lot of CISOs are satisfied in their job, and they feel that that they enjoy it. But I think you're very much you're calm, and you're like, hey, this is a good thing. Go for it. Sorry.
So so CISO burnout is the thing.
Yeah, it
And
totally is.
I'm saying it's not. It 100% is. And so I've thought a lot over the last 2 years about why is it that I don't consider the stress a burden? It's not that there is no stress. It's that the stress is not a burden for me. And my satisfaction is so high. Well, I think two things. One, I think the stress is not a burden because I feel no stress over things that I do not control. Right. So, and that I learned kind of the hard way in operations, where whether it wasn't ransomware back then, it was the firewall broke or whatever, right? But you're talking to someone on the other end of the phone who's having the worst day of their year, if not their career, right? Either a breach, firewall, just whatever else. Like emotions are high. And if you take that personally, you're going to be one miserable human being.
Yeah.
Right. And you also have to learn to kind of calm them down and be that calm but decisive leader on the phone. Right. So one, it made me a really good instant commander. Two, it made me segment things I control, things I don't control, and whether that causes me anxiety or stress. I don't experience stress over things I don't control throughout my entire life. Right. I say things like, "Oh, that's interesting," right? So it's not like I've done it long enough that it's just who I am. It's just what I do now. But that has been a long, long time in the making, right? And the other thing that I do, aside from stress, is for 20 plus years, 22, 23, something like that, my technical chops were part of my identity. Right? I wasn't the best. I've never been the best, but I was among the best with my technical ability, my technical chops, acumen, whatever. Right? I lead in my title for 20 years. Right? And that was part of who I was. I was very, very proud of that. But now I'm an executive. I'm a strategic executive, and my technical acumen doesn't matter anymore. In fact, I had to quit telling other people I was technical. Then I had to quit telling myself I was technical. And now looking back, I can see how wise this was for me, for my part, because I could either be good at my job and meet all the expectations of my job, or I could scratch my itch and have personal satisfaction that I still had my technical jobs, right? I couldn't do both, right? So what I did, either I was going to satisfy my job's expectations and I was not going to fulfill my own personal satisfaction, or vice versa. And I think that is where a lot of CISO burnout can occur, is people they're not aligning with their own values. They're not aligning with their own identity. I sit down the technical thing. I don't have any access to my team's tools. I don't tell myself I'm technical at all. Like I can hook up a microphone, but that's about it, right? Doesn't matter what I did 20 years ago. Doesn't matter what I did 5 years ago. Not me now, right? So now my identity is my effectiveness as a leader, as an executive, as that stuff. I aligned my job and my personal identity values. Therefore, my satisfaction is really, really high. And you combine that with the lack of stress thing, and it works out really well. Like, I
Yeah,
like it.
I love it. You've just shared so much wisdom there. I think it says a lot both about you, but also about the culture of the company, and how they, like, you said at the start you wanted to be, part of the business, not just a partner to the business, but
Right.
that, like, the fact that you've got the
Oh,
culture
I'm
of the,
into this.
this is
Yeah.
it, yeah, of course. But that like, yeah, you are very much that operational CISO, and that's where it's like, hey, this is gonna, incidents are gonna happen, but taking a leaf, certainly for me, taking a leaf out of the, when I was earlier on in my career, I was part of a bunch of incidents, and I remember like, yeah, absolutely panicking and going, oh my God, this is terrible. We've just been compromised. And yeah, my CISO at the time, and he's gone on to much bigger and better things, saying, of course, but we're gonna get compromised. It's okay that we have these incidents, that clicking on phishing links is gonna happen, and that's why you have that incident response plan. But being told that actually made me feel way more like, oh, actually, this isn't my responsibility that somebody has clicked on a phishing link. It's I
Yeah.
should, my job is to detect it and respond to it, and that's what we're doing. But yeah, it's not I'm not responsible for that.
No, I mean,
So,
I've had bad days, right? I mean,
this,
so like that happens, but there's also, and this is also part of the reason why I wanted to become a CISO, um, to some degree. So I spent 19 years catching bad guys early in the kill chain, right?
Mhm.
And listening to what would have prevented this, and seeing that, and seeing, oh, this organization works really well, this organization doesn't work nearly as well, despite way more resources and all this. Like, why is that? And so to some degree, when you're on the vendor side and you're kind of looking across all these orgs, you're like, man, if I could take care of just one org, and like I was the guy who got to determine that, it'd be like playing t-ball. Like I could crank that, right? And you know what? Like I was right. Like it's when you're the guy, and you can say we're going to do this, and this is how we're going to do, and this is what we're going to prioritize. Like it's awesome. Like it's awesome because it's not hard to mitigate. Significant risk reduction is simple,
ah,
easy, and cheap.
yeah.
Now, is it necessarily easy in every single environment? No. It depends on the culture, depends on the organization, depends on a lot of stuff. But this is not a technology problem, right? We don't have a technology problem. In general, we don't have a finance problem. In general, the problem is prioritization, leadership, things like that. And that's in my control. That's my job, right? So yeah, like I've mitigated material risk, cyber risk, and it was somewhat of a thing for me. I kind of declared victory when I was asked by my executive, well, Brent, what is our potential uh, exposure to class action lawsuits in the Philippines because of PII? And I was like, I don't know what you think they taught me at CISO school, but it wasn't about tort law in the Philippines. But the fact that you're asking me this question is fantastic. I will absolutely go lead that discussion. I will find the people. Let's talk, right? Um, so the what I perceived before I became a CISO, like, oh, the big deal is like keep bad guys out, don't have any, major ungodly big breaches and all, and that's cool. But that's also the easy part. That was an easier part given my background,
Mhm.
right? I was like, oh, hey, like catch bad guys early. I can do that, right? I know how to do that pretty well. Some of the other areas, knew less about, but I found that uh, I have a decent bit. I've turned a lot of my experience and expertise into wisdom that helps me in with a great number of things.
Again, so much information there. I want to pick up on one of the things he said, which is that like it's easy to significantly mitigate certain risks. I know one of the first moves you made at Afni was you deployed MFA across like 10,000 employees. Can you tell me a little bit about, well, first of all, was that like your top priority, but I suppose how you identified your top priorities and how you went about it to
Sure.
get to immediately
So
make that impact?
yeah, so my exec team didn't really know what they didn't know, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, and by that, I mean, I went, I was like, hey, how do you want me to report to you? And they're like, we're kind of hoping you could tell us. And I was like, okay, well, there are a couple different approaches. One of them is to pick a framework and do an assessment, calculate a maturity score, and then try to advance that maturity over time. And I loved it. My CFO stopped me and he goes, Brent, let me tell you right now, I don't give a damn what some maturity score says. I want to know that we're mitigating risk. And I was like, you're my guy. I love that. And so I looked and we had MFA across the board, but there were little gaps. We had some people using SMS based, we had some people using phone, we had some single factor stuff, we had right. So that I started on a warpath on that because I don't need to spend 6 months and 50 or 100 grand to do an assessment to say like, hey, that's a problem. Like, go fix that problem, right? And so I dove in immediately on that stuff. And what I did is I identified 4 hills that I would absolutely die on as a CISO. One of them was 100% strong MFA. Now, for me, that means YubiKeys. Now, we got YubiKeys. Every single employee has them. No question, no qualms, right?
Mhm.
Another was no BYOD. Now, okay, some of us, like I have Outlook on my phone, right? Okay, that's fine. And even that is strong MFA. It's not UPKs, but it's strong MFA. Okay, but for bulk access, like someone's laptop, VPN, things like that, only by no BYOD, only my corporate devices. Third, 100% EDR coverage. Every single device, 100% EDR, no questions, no nothing, right? And fourth is rapid patching of any external vulnerabilities. And I did this as a brand new first-time CISO because I had been listening to SecureWorks incident responders, threat researchers, the SOC, adversarial testing guys, like all of those for 20 years, saying essentially what we find out from the Verizon data breach report and insurers and everyone else, which says, how do companies lose money? Ransomware, BEC. Funds transfer fraud is kind of a subset of BEC, in my opinion. What are the vectors for that? Phishing, stolen credentials, external vulns. So if I do those 4 things that I mentioned, does that almost entirely mitigate all those very common risks? Yeah. How much money did I spend on those things? Not much. In the grand scheme of things, not much, right? So first and foremost, let's do those. Okay, and that worked. Now, before I even did those things, I teed off against a named threat group, Scatter Spider. They tore up BPOs in 22 before they did MGM, Caesars, Clorox, all those people, right? So since what my VPs, I handled all that. And before I got all this stuff done, they ruined 4 of my evenings, right? And since I've gotten all that stuff done, so we knocked them out. I faced a named threat group without those things. Now I have those things. Could I get popped with something? Yeah, sure, of course, right? But that's where I started. Like we've done a lot more since then, but we've done a lot without incurring a mass amount of time or expense. And if we do those things, so many other things are dramatically simpler and dramatically easier. What it does is it turns big problems into small problems. It turns crisis into inconvenience, right? When you have a baseline of the basics are done, the basics are done really, really well, that's a great place to be.
So like you put in place these 4 measures, and you've, to a certain extent, won the hearts of the executive team by the sounds of it. And I know we were saying previously that you're even giving money back to them, which is not quite unheard of, but pretty impressive and pretty special. I suppose, what's your approach to, I suppose, prioritizing and evaluating risk today? How do you say, all right, these are my goals for next year? How do you say this is what we should do?
Sure. So I'm not entirely going to say gut feel, but it starts there, right?
Okay.
So I'm not opposed, by the way, just so I can say this. I think the cyber risk quantification is awesome and a
Mhm.
very valuable thing in some environments. And I'm not in any way opposed to it. And it's not that it's awesome, it's that it is a hell of a lot better than anything else. Okay, to quantify and prioritize and all that.
Yep.
I don't do it. I don't mind doing it, but I think that it can be done well. I think that it can be done overly complicated. But what I do is I look at a great many things, and I involve my team. I involve external people. I involve plain of something. Okay, tell me a plausible story where not doing this causes significant negative impact.
Mhm.
And if I can answer that question like that, we better fix it. And if I can't answer that question, or if the question is 3, 4 levels of theory down, we that's a lower priority. So Andy Ellis has a model that he's put out that I really like, which
Yeah.
is basically how surprising would this be, and how bad would it be? And it's like, oh, this could happen tomorrow, and it would be devastatingly bad. You better go fix that. And it was like, I'd be kind of surprised if this happened. And even if it happened, it'd be, okay. And so that enables me to look at stuff and quickly say, how surprising would it be if that happened? Ah, man, I'd be super surprised if that happened. Okay, even if it did, how bad would it be? Probably not that bad. That's a lower priority inherently, right?
Mhm.
In what order I take care of those in, and there's a little pyramid, right? So I categorize them tier 0, 1, 2, 3,
Yep.
4, and we're really on kind of tier 3 now. I don't really care what order we do them in, right? And that also enables me to generically say, kind of gut feel say, is this a $10 solution to a $5 problem? So, for example, we looked at a product, a vendor,
Yep.
a while ago, and I saw it and I was like, cool, that's an elegant solution to a real problem. I get it. And I was talking to the CIO. I'm like, it happened to come through IT, not didn't come through my team. And I said, well, I mean, gut feel like that's worth $50,000 to $75,000 a year to me. What's the price tag? $470,000. Well, probably not, right?
Yep.
Like, and I can articulate why that is for every single thing that I spend money or time on. I can say, is this mitigating a material risk? Or if we don't do this, tell me a real story about how something bad happens. And or how does this enable us? Like, how does
Yep.
this enable cost avoidance, increased efficiency, enabling sales, client satisfaction, or compliance? Right? Like one of those 5 things. So there's 3 different questions I ask for any given thing to say, do I care? How much do I care?
Yeah, and like it's essentially I suppose a custom risk framework that you developed, where you're basically, you're challenging the material. I like it,
Yeah.
you can call it good feel, but it's knowledge, experience, and it's also important for your organization as well, because your risk tolerance is going to be completely different than somebody else's risk tolerance. If
Yeah.
I presume if your call centers go offline, that's when you lose money. But if you're
Oh yeah.
yeah, so you're going to care a lot more about
Sure.
that than hypothetically, I don't know, somebody's phone or laptop getting, I don't know,
Yes.
like whatever, getting,
100%. Which, and I do that all the time. I'm like, now, if I work for Boeing,
Yeah,
Totally different story.
completely. Yeah,
Completely different story, right?
my F-16 plans are far more.
Yes, exactly. And so it also depends on what my company is doing. Like, are we
Yep.
growing? Are we growing to sell? Are we going to do M&A? Do we want to expand into Europe? I mean, there's a million different things, right, that will alter. But as I tell people, like, my job is not to protect Boeing, it's to protect my company. So this applies to my company and my experience and where we are right now. So it's me, it's the maturity of my company, it's the industry of my company, it's all of those things are unique to me. And that's where I think vendors don't always necessarily appreciate all those variables. But I mean, I'm in my chair. I'm not in your chair. I'm not in that guy's chair. I'm in this chair. So
And you've been on the other side as well, so and I definitely want to ask a little bit about vendors and the vendors a little bit later on because you've got some nice guides on how to work with you. I want to just ask a little bit about, I suppose, the internal not necessarily politics, but the internal procedure for saying, hey, like measuring progress and reporting on progress that you have, because you've clearly got a mature program. You've reduced material impact. I suppose, how do you say to your manager, the CEO, the board, here's how we're improving, and like who does that, who does
yeah.
security roll up to in that sense, and why?
So I report to my executive team. We're a privately held company. So
Mhm.
it's not the formal board. It is the exec team. We call it cybersecurity steering committee, the
Yeah.
board, whatever. Once a month.
Okay.
And for the first year, it's like, hey, here's all the stuff that we're doing. And it was like we were doing a lot of good things, but they were not necessarily programs, right? So I said, okay, we do this. That's cool. We're going to do it in a program where we're going to do it. We're going to document that we did it. We're going to do it. I also am a little bit metrics adverse. I like telling a story. I like mitigating risk. I like my model of how I evaluate risk. I don't put any metrics around that. Other people may have to, your culture, whatever, but it works for me. So yeah, that works, right? Um, and so year one was kind of like, hey, here's what we're doing, and we're busy, right? We had a
Mhm.
lot of stuff that we were getting out. Year two was really kind of maintenance mode, right? It's like, all right, we've done a whole lot of stuff. Now we're gonna go crank it down a little bit in some defined areas. Year three, what I'm in now, is make security boring, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like, listen, nothing in my world is urgent. There are important things all over the place, but nothing in my world is urgent. At least from a cyber incident kind of perspective, right? If a client says jump, then hey, we say how high, no doubt. But nothing is urgent. Things are important. And as such, I've noticed that like when I was first year, like we were using the full hour every month
Mhm.
talking about cybersecurity and all this. I had my last update a couple days ago. We were in and out in 15 minutes because like, all right, we don't have any real new projects, right? It's existing, keep the lights on kind of stuff. We're uncovering racks. We're doing this. We're making this more efficient. We're addressing this. We're categorizing these things. Like it's all just BAU, business as normal. Keep the lights on, crank it down, return money to the business. Zero attrition on my team for 2 years. I mean, it's great. So I am metrics adverse in my current role, and that works for me, and I like it. But I can also easily tell a story where bad things don't happen or devastating things don't happen. It's relatively easy to tell that story.
I
And
got
I
it.
had internal and external validation from that, right? Cyber insurance premiums have been cut in half in 2 years, first a third, then another quarter. I have external validation from Scatter Spider. They tore my competitors. I was fine. We were fine. That's cool. I have internal validation from my team and IT and other well-respected people in the organization who understand a bit about security. And we go and I talk about these things, and I talk to them with everyone from sales and client services to, business analytics and business intelligence team, to the CIO, to all these people, and tell them, hey, this is what we did, this is why we did it, and so everyone is kind of like, that seems solid to me. And it's not really hand wavy. It's not it's definitely not skies falling. It's also not Pollyanna, everything is just fine. But it's
Yeah.
like, hey, here's how I approach evaluating risk, and here's how I think about it. So think about any damn thing that you can come up with and tell that story. And if it's like, oh, well, if crazy high-end bad guy physically got on a plane and then physically broke into our building and then physically did this, then you're like, well, that's a good place to be.
I love how personally you take the scattered spider attacks. That it's like they ruined 4 of my evenings, and I never let them forget that.
You know what I did? No joke. I portrayed it. I said, hey guys, we just got some free red team assessments.
Yeah.
And 100% true. And we knocked it out. So I'm like I was happy. I was like, whoa, we nailed it. Right.
One of the things I love hearing you talking about is exactly that. You're saying, hey, I'm happy. And you've, gone on record saying your stress has never been lower. Your job satisfaction has never been higher, but also you've done that for your team. So you've had zero attrition over the last few years. How have you achieved that for your team? How have you gone about making them happy?
Sure. I generally like to think I'm not an asshole. And I generally like to think that I'm relatively enjoyable to be around.
Mm-hmm.
And I just I had being on the vendor side, I've had a lot of opportunity to observe a lot of leaders, a lot of security leaders at all different levels in
Okay.
IT, technology, security, what have you, right? And as such, I've been looking at that and saying what works, what doesn't. And I've been a leader. Even when I wasn't a manager, I was leading people. So even if I had no direct reports, I had 100 people who were like, okay, this is how we do this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I've just kind of revised that over like 20 some odd years. One of the best things that ever happened to me was, by nature, I'm not very empathetic. And so I would early in my career, I would send emails, and I had a boss at the time who called me, and he was like, how would you feel if you got that? And I was like, that's fine with me. Like that's directed spot. I love it. Like I like that attitude. And that's what screwed me up. I was using the golden rule, right? Which is treat others how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't work for me. What works for me is treat others how they want to be treated, right? And it seems subtle, but given me and who I am, like that was a big deal. It was a really big deal. And so I started doing that. And all of a sudden I started getting traction for a lot of my ideas, and people started listening to me, and I just liked it. And it was entirely because I started observing what do other people want. And really that's what sales boils down to, is empathy, and people respond to their incentives. So if I am empathetic and I understand the incentives that my team has as individuals and corporately as a team, and I do that internally for my company as well, and other executives and everyone, right? Then things generally work out. Like if you are a kind person, if you are empathetic, if you understand that people respond to their incentives, it generally will work out well for you. And it
Um,
has worked out well for me.
so I suppose, have you put in place anything for your, like that's very much your, and it's fantastic, and it definitely relates to how to deal with you as a vendor, which I still definitely want to get to. But that's like a lot of what you're doing, I suppose, as a leader. What have you put in place anything for your team? Like, is there training? Is there like I suppose work-life balance? Is there anything that you're like, or is it just, hey, actually we've got a good culture in this organization. That's helped.
We have a good culture.
Okay.
I try to, so people matter.
Yeah.
People always matter. And I make sure that my team knows that they matter.
Hmm.
And so there's never any question about, any kind of personal stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
go
Deal with
take
it.
care of
Yeah.
that. We will be okay, right?
It's more important.
I also, I do, I like doing little things, right? So for one, like when I go over to the Philippines for my team there, I wear these shirts. They don't wrinkle. And I was over there last year, and one of my guys said, "Oh, I really like that." Turns out, and I told him where I got it. Turns out that that place would not ship to the Philippines. So I'm going back over in 3 weeks, and I'm taking this type of non-wrinkle shirt for every single person on my team
Nice.
because it's kind of cool. I have in the past, I have been part of getting developers chocolate cakes and bicycles and really good monitors and any other kind of thing. So I like doing unique things. And if I'm going to have a team meeting, I would rather not be in a conference room. I would much rather be off somewhere where you can probably spend less money and have a way better time. Things like that. And these are all things that I've picked up over time from various leaders that I've had. And I try to be very approachable.
Hmm.
And I just try to be someone that wants to hang out or that people want to hang out with. But beyond that, I also set my expectations very firmly up front. I have fanatical levels of integrity. I will be extremely accommodating on when you work, where you work, all of that. But if we have an incident, I need you. I need absolutely all hands on deck. No qualms, no delays, no nothing. I need you. But that will rarely happen. But that's the mandate that I have. That's the expectations. And when I go into kind of instant commander mode, I really should get a hat that says instant
Absolutely.
commander because this
Cape,
is what I do.
whatever you.
Like, yeah, I had to handle an incident when I had been here like 3 months, and I was like, listen, I've only been here a little bit. Y'all don't really know me super well yet. So understand that I need to go into kind of incident commander mode. And that means I'm very direct, I'm very blunt, and I need to get something done. And we'll have a beer on Friday. So just grant me some grace here. And that works. And so I firmly set expectations, but also things about timelines. And I'm like, hey, this is really important to me. I need this done. Or I don't care what the deadline is. I just need to see progress over time. Because again, nothing is urgent, things are important. So progress over time. And if you meet those requirements, hey man, we're good. And it's worked, quite honestly.
You've clearly learned a lot from, I suppose, working with and observing a whole lot of other cybersecurity leaders,
Yeah.
and like learn like the empathy side of it, which is awesome. What I know I've mentioned it, but I really enjoyed your post, how to work with me as a vendor.
Uh-huh.
It's there's like I think that the biggest part of it is tell me how you're going to like either save me money or if I don't purchase you that you're going to cost that it's going to cost me money. Um, but also you share exactly what you said there, that if you if you do a couple of minutes research on me, that'll come back in spades, that you'll be able to have that conversation and be
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
a lot more well, it'll be a lot more, you'll treat them with respect as well. How I suppose, do you think security vendors are getting any better, and how, like, what are the best ones do to stand out?
So my rules are really hard, right? My
Okay.
rules are treat me like a human being, don't lie to me, and don't waste my time.
I can
Right?
think of a couple of vendors that immediately don't
Yeah.
pass.
And what treat me like a human being means is do just a smidgen of research on me, right? Or in my company or on whatever,
Mhm.
right? And I run the numbers, and that is 5% of my inbound. So 95% of my inbound gets ignored or sent to junk. One of the two. So standing out is like, do 30 seconds of research, say, hey, I read your post on, or hey, I see your company does this. Here's how we can help. I'll read it, I'll respond, I'll do something, right? I make it really freaking easy. Not everyone does, right? But there
Yeah.
are plenty of ways to form a relationship. And this gets, it's a systemic problem, but at least for right now, like eventually will I have to have other rules? Maybe. I don't know. But right now, what I do is I have boundaries. So I say Friday afternoons is my vendor meeting time. And if you follow my rules, which is just, again, don't lie to me, don't waste my time. The biggest deal, treat me like a human being, we're fine, right? But that goes 3 months out. And I've met with a lot of vendors. I meet with 2 or 3 a week, probably on Friday afternoons, then some Thursday mornings, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it works. That and that alone makes you stand out. And that's way before we've even talked about what the hell you do.
Yeah.
Like, just like, now, I'm not a buyer of much of anything, but I benefit and you benefit from
Mhm.
this meeting. And just because I'm not a buyer today doesn't mean that I won't be tomorrow. And I take notes on every single vendor I meet with, like I was still in sales almost. So I know who I met with, what I thought, what questions I asked, what they told me, what the gist was, all that. And I do, I'd say 2 to 5 referrals a month of stuff that I don't buy, but I recommend to other CISOs that they do. But here's the deal: all that relationship building, my notes, my referrals, the call, all that. Most of that doesn't show up in a Salesforce metric. So it works, but it doesn't show up in a metric. So that is more of a, what metrics are you being held to? That's why I have these conversations as much as I can with CROs so that
Mhm.
I can get to the root, because a lot of DGRs, a lot of sellers even agree with me, but I'm like, yeah, but they have this metric of how many dials a day. I'm like, sorry, but the dials per day is not gonna work. On CISOs, maybe it works on someone. It doesn't work on me.
Yep, I hear you. It's yeah, it's kind of somebody that needs to. I think the best organizations do, the best people do, but you need to be taking a little bit more of a long term. Hey, we're building this relationship, and it's actually totally okay if you're not a buyer of any solution.
It's fun.
It's far more important to if you can give me feedback and say, hey, this is an area that's good. So, I want to talk a little bit about the future. The first is a kind of a business related question. It's because AI is disrupting a whole lot of areas, but it's also very much disrupting like the call center area as well. How are you thinking about it, and how do you think about sort of the importance of security with AI?
Sure. So there's, I actually spoke at a dinner the other night about Gen AI, or about AI in general. And
Mhm.
I started by saying, hey, who is tired of talking about AI? And every single
Yeah,
person raised their hand, right? So I had a little bit different approach than I'd ever heard on it before, and we had a very enjoyable conversation about it. Um, I am I'm not worried for me and my org
yeah,
about bad guys using AI. That
sure.
that doesn't really concern me for a lot of reasons. Um, that enables me to focus my efforts on enabling our business and coming up with ideas on how can we use AI
Mhm.
safely without shooting ourselves in the foot, and how can we use it to be a differentiator in the market.
Mhm.
Now, some of that I have more control over than others. One very practical thing that I have is things like enabling Copilot for all of us internally to use, right? Okay, well, so over permission, over sharing, could be a thing. Granted, it's not going to like put us out of business, but it could be embarrassing depending on who has what. So doing the real basic stuff of retention policies, permission, admin audits, all that kind of stuff. We've been doing that for a while, I would say. So when you have the focus on protection and resilience, then you naturally end up doing stuff that as new shiny features come out, you've already enabled. Like if we've eliminated legacy OSs, or if we've eliminated old things without any business value, be it email, SharePoint sites, whatever else, or if we've audited permissions, not because it's like the end all be all security issue, but just because we want to have a clean, resilient environment. Cool. That makes those future things a lot easier, right? So with AI in general, it's kind of the overall focus that I have on resilience and protection makes that road a much easier road to go down. That's as far as like our own internal stuff. Now, being a differentiator in the market, I have a contributing role there, right? Where we all understand. I'm like, all right, so here's what bad looks like, right? Like, don't do this. Like, don't don't take our intellectual property and throw it out on public ChatGPT. Like, yeah, that'd be bad, right? But if we want to take this and run it in our own tenant and do it, okay, fine. Like, so beyond just setting some guardrails, that's really like my job at the end of the day is to, one, make sure that we don't run into the wall at full speed. And so if I do that minimally, then I'm doing good. If I can then additionally help with that and help advance those initiatives, that's even better.
Got it. And we're kind of coming to the end, so I want to just ask again a little bit more about the future. You've seen security evolve. You've been working in security for 20 something years at this point. What do you think security and security operations teams are going to look like in 5 years' time?
Huh. I don't know. I know how I think this should look.
Even
And
better.
it's an Elon Musk quote, I think, that is the biggest mistake smart engineers make is they optimize the process that should not exist. So all too often, we look at things like, oh my God, how do we take 70,000 alerts a day and get it down to 70 a day? Like, that's a huge win. I'm like, yes, it is. But it's even a bigger win if you can start with 10 a day. Right? And so rather than, oh, I'm going to figure out how I have 8 people doing this thing, and I'm going to figure out how to do it in 4 people and then let the other 4 or 3 or whatever, like go do other stuff. It's like, okay, that's fine. How about you just require one person to do it in the first place? And so I focus a lot on root cause kind of stuff, right? That's why I love YubiKeys so much, because if I have 100% strong MFA across the entire user base, makes a lot of other stuff way, way simpler, right? And way less of a problem. So I like to sidestep issues from the get-go. And in doing so, security operations becomes dramatically easier. We see precedent with this in, quote, active cyber insurance, where they will kind of scan your external environment and say, like, hey, we will not insure you unless you fix this, like pronto.
Yep.
Or we won't insure you at all. Like, go take your butt to Chubb and see what they have to say to you. I like that. It's also the model that I saw in an operations center, where you're like, these 2 people are in similar environments. They have a similar environment. They're in a similar vertical, all this. Why do these people require dramatically more work from the SOC than these people? Okay. And you start figuring that out. And it's not even necessarily budget. It's not neat. We have the technology, right? A lot of times it's leadership. So with effective leadership, I think that security operations can be dramatically more effective and dramatically simpler than it is today. And that's also what enables you to have smaller teams of just badasses that just kick butt day in and day out and love coming to work. So that's what I think it should look like. What will it look like? I don't know. I mean, to some degree, what were the biggest problems in cybersecurity 30 years ago? Passwords and patches. What are the biggest issues today? Passwords and patches. Have we gotten better in 30 years? Some. Maybe it's arguable. There's nuance there, but I mean, hey man, the basics work. The basics work, and it dramatically simplifies the entire equation, and frankly, makes life more enjoyable. So, I hope that we have a renewed focus on the basics.
I think that's a fantastic way to end and a fantastic message. That's unfortunately all we're going to have time for today, Brent, but I've really enjoyed this conversation. If people want to follow your journey, what's the best way to do it?
LinkedIn. I post
LinkedIn?
a lot on LinkedIn, and I do it not to sit there and spout my opinion, but to get feedback. So it's really valuable for me when people give me feedback, either good or bad, and that helps me articulate things and helps me get better. So, and I think from what people tell me, it's useful to them as well, because very often they're like, I don't always agree with you, but it always makes me think. All right, that's what we're here for.
I love it. And then as a community, we can get better. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, man.